So you had an amazing experience with a near-death experience, right? I
I
remember when
did.
I went onto your podcast, and you have an amazing podcast, Oh My Health, There's Hope. I love that name. We'll come back to it, I'm sure. But you mentioned a little bit about a near-death experience. What was that about?
Actually, I've had more than one, if you can believe it or not. I had a surgery and I ended up getting pulmonary embolism. So that's blood clots in your lungs that are extremely fatal. And I didn't die, thank goodness. I just feel like if you're here, there's still a reason, right? Like there's still something more for me to do. But the one that I think I was talking to you about is I went into the hospital to have a surgery fixed from a surgery I had before that damaged my vagus nerve and paralyzed it. And so I had to have my stomach removed. That was the option I had. And when I went in, it dehisced, which means the surgical site inside opened and all the contents of my stomach, like acids, everything were going out into my body. And so I became septic and got very ill. And they feed you through a tube, which is something called TPN. It's all synthetic, and I'm super grateful we have it because it's what keeps a lot of people alive and thriving until their bodies can start doing what they need to do. But for me, it was synthetic, and my organs didn't like it, and they were shutting down. So after 2 months in the hospital, I was sent home literally to make peace with my life. It was either make you comfortable here in the hospital or do you want to go home? I felt like I didn't go in the hospital sick, and the next thing I know, I'm dying. What's going on? So I wanted to go home. And when I came home, I had a brand new grandson, and I talk about him all the time. He was our fifth grandson, so I have a lot of beautiful grandchildren. But he was the one that was so important to me because I had no time with him. He's only 9 weeks at the time. So
Oh,
I was there at his birth, went in for this little surgery, and now I'm dying. And so I'm holding him thinking, how do I make a memory with him? He will not remember the simplest things like what it smelled like. Like I still remember what my grandmother smelled like, or even my grandfather, because he smoked a pipe and I can remember that pipe smoke. And
mm,
I don't like smoking at all, but I crave the smell of that pipe smoke
mm.
because that reminds me of my grandfather. And like he won't remember how I smiled, what it sounded like when I laughed, or anything, the simplest things. And so I went on
Mm.
a quest to create a memory almost 10 years ago with my grandson, and not thinking I would survive because I was told I wouldn't, and I believed them. But my mindset wasn't about surviving as long as I did or even another day. It was about creating that memory. And I focused in on what kind of memory can I create with a 9 week old? I got to give him something to remember me by. So I'm happy to say we have a bucket full of memories now. And I have two more grandchildren. So we have a total of seven now. And I'm all about making those memories and being in that moment with them. And for all of you that are parents right now, I know that your parents, your grandparents, friends who have kids tell you, enjoy it while you can, because before you know it, it's over, right? And you're thinking, I wish that were today. And we do our lives like we're, as moms, we're wearing the hat of the taxi driver and the nurse and the referee and the coach and the teacher and the chef, like the housekeeper. We're like having all these hats, and it's hard to stay in that moment. I feel like when we get grandkids, we get a do-over
Oh my
because we're
gosh.
not that busy person anymore. And it doesn't matter what's going on in my life. If one of my grandkids FaceTime me, I'm like, I'm sorry, I've got to go. My grandson's calling, right? I mean, they respect my time with work and everything because they're so sweet. But when they call, I answer, and I'm in that moment because I know this moment right now that I have is a blessing. How many more I have, that's
Mm,
not up to me,
mm.
but I'm not going to miss that, creating that moment with them.
Oh my gosh. I'm so curious about this baby bucket list memory thing that you have collected since then. I have this image of, this is really silly, but like you holding your grandson over like, I don't know, this skyline and like I don't know, Lion King stuff where you got Simba holding up there. I don't know. What did you do with your grandson? I gotta know.
So when he was little, I bought these little storybooks. I think I still have a couple of them on my shelves, but I bought these little storybooks that you could read to them. in your
Mm,
own voice,
mm.
knowing that, because I love reading. Reading to me is huge. I read to my babies when they were still in the womb, and they're all major readers. Like they love to absorb reading. And so I bought these books that you could read the pages and leave your voice imprint in the book, so that if I died, they would have these memories of me reading to them. So I did little things like that to create memories, and hopefully that one day they'll pass these on now to their kids if I'm not here. If I'm here, I'll create them for them. But I also started journaling a lot because they might not have memories because they're too little, but these are things that we did. So I started journaling. Like today was a really great day. I was so weak, but when I got to hold you with me in the bed, and watch you sleep. And so I started writing these little journals to them, which, by the way, people journal for a lot of reasons. You journal to get it out there. You journal to create. You journal to like motivate yourself or inspire or to remember. Here's the thing, you don't even realize that those become amazing gifts to your
Mm.
family after you've left this earth, because they're going to run across that journal and see a little sweet spot about them. Like my grandson running across that part of,
Oh.
I was so sick I couldn't get out of bed today. I just didn't have the energy. But your mom brought you over and you got to nap with me and I got to watch you sleep and you were so cute. And I could write that journal to him and he could go back and look at that at any time of his life.
And I see that so clearly, and these memories. I'm super curious because now your mission these days is storytelling. And I hear this passion for storytelling that I know from being on your podcast, that I know just infuses your life purpose. And I hear these stories with your family. I'm also hearing that these stories, sh- you really started. Did you appreciate stories more after this near death experience? Like, and did that lead into the podcast?
I took me a while to appreciate my story because I didn't like being sick. And to me, being sick was weak. And I didn't like it. I'm the type of person, if I am so sick, I get up, I get dressed, I make my bed, and I might lay down on it because I'm too weak to do anything else. But I have to keep moving. And when I had to ask, when I was asked to tell my story, I didn't want to. Who's going to relate to having their stomach removed? Like, that's not like I had cancer or anything. It's just, who's going to even relate to that? But I said yes. And I went and I spoke on a stage literally of 30,000 people. And I was sweating. I kept going, because I was so nervous. I couldn't directly look anyone in the eye because I just kept feeling like they were judging me. They weren't getting it, they weren't relating to me. And when I was done, I could not wait to get off the stage. I literally beelined it. And because it's such a big event, there was a stage director at the end that shows you where to go next. And I started moving past her. She's like, wait, where are you going? And I literally am like, am I not done yet? She goes, oh no, you're done with your talk. But there's a line of people, and she's got tears in her eyes, by the way. She goes, there's a line of people waiting to talk to you. And I looked around the corner and there was literally, I am not joking, like 200 people standing in this line. And all they wanted to do was come up and hug me or say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you told that story. And I realized at that moment how our journey was given to us as a gift, and how sharing it, voicing it, is the miracle that other people are looking for. And so, yes, a lot of them had their stomachs. I bet all of them did. But they knew there was hope, right? There was hope that they too can move forward. They were no different than me, and find that miracle for themselves. And if that meant just mindset themselves to think, I'm going to just create this beautiful moment right now, I don't care what happens tomorrow because I have right now, and start focusing in those moments. But I knew right then that each one of us who are looking for that place online to stand out, and we see these mentors and we try to copy them, and we see these educators and we try to copy them. But the truth of the matter is, if you really want to stand out online, you already have everything you need. Your uniqueness and your story is truly like your beacon of light that you can shine out into the world. It's like sending a piece of your heartbeat out there and pulling those people in that really relate to what's going on with you. So I'm a huge storyteller. And when I realized my story would only relate to a few people, right? I decided to start bringing in other people who had these powerful stories that I had never heard of, right? And these huge stories of survival, family trauma, or illnesses, or losing their legs. Like, it was crazy stuff. And yet they're doing the unthinkable stuff that nobody ever thought. Like, for me, having all my body parts and operating correctly could not even accomplish. They're doing the most incredible. Some guy just reached out to be on my podcast who has a terminal brain tumor, and he is breaking two marathon records before he dies. That's his goal. And so he's out there doing
Oh my
unbelievable
gosh.
things, using his time, whatever that is, in the most powerful way.
Wow. That's
It's pretty
amazing.
incredible.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And what's coming up for me is I hear that when you share your story, the truth, the heart of your story, that it relates outward, even if you might think that you're weird or alone or something like that. If by sharing that weird alone part of you, people resonate. And what comes up for me, a stomach bypass, it is embarrassing. It doesn't involve personal trauma, like family trauma. I sometimes feel that there can be a difficulty in sharing like personal stuff, right? I mean, as much as people will relate to it, and I trust that, I know that so many people get afraid, really, of sharing kind of personal trauma. What is your like wisdom around that? I mean, yeah, what's your wisdom around that?
That there isn't anybody that has a perfect story. And that personal trauma that you go in through, I know this is going to sound really bad for me to say, but it really is a truly a gift. It's it's building you for what is magical in your life. It's getting you ready for that. And how you come out on the other side really is going to define that. And so for me to say to someone who's abused as a child, that was a miracle for you. That sounds really bad, right? I'm not dismissing it. Should never have happened to you. But who's going to be the voice for those little children now? And maybe you went through that because that gave you your voice, that gave you the experience. And now you became a champion for those little kids who don't have a voice of their own yet. And so, yes, it's a horrible thing. Like, horrible things have happened through my childhood. I was a mom, a single mom at 17, in college, like working three jobs. And I was ashamed to be a single mom. But here I am. Look what I'm doing now. And it was that being that single mom that made me strong, that made me like, I can't stop because I have someone else dependent on me. So I can't go get partying with my friends and get drunk on Saturday nights. And I'm working three jobs so I could pay for college, and I can't do this. And so those things, even though at the time were not fun, and I looked at them as not a blessing. I mean, my daughter was always a blessing, but that struggle, not so much. But I look back now and I realize that I needed every single step that it took to get me here to be able to do this. And so, yeah, I don't even know that I could have survived if I didn't have that strong mindset that I got as a single mom, struggling to get my college degree, to raise a child all on my own. And when I went to college, I didn't even have family to help with babysitting. So it was a lot, but it made me one strong woman for sure.
Yeah, and I hear this faith, this mindset, whatever you want to call it. I What comes to mind is Tony Robbins, I'm not your guru, but this is happening for a reason. This is teaching you, it's an opportunity. I forget the exact quote in the movie. It's gonna come to me in 2 seconds. What is also coming up for me is sort of the fear of disappointing others. As I, in my own health and wellness journey and expressing that outwards, I'm there's a fear of being super vulnerable, like names, like getting like putting specific people out there, or when family's so close, it's like it's there's I think there's a fear that of whether that's disapproval or like, yeah, whether I think a fear of disapproval, that you might be judged for your story. Like there's this real fear, and I know, and I feel that it's just on the other side, but sometimes it's like you're on standing on one side of the river and you can see the other shore and you're like, all right, I just gotta get through the waters of sharing my story. But damn, I'm not, like, I'm gonna drown in those waters if I go across. Like, how do I how do I swim across the raging channel?
It is super scary to go out there and
Yeah.
share like your failures or the I've had people go out and share about their alcoholism, right? People in AA do it all the time and the terrible things they've done to their family and friends and children and like they go out there and they have to that's part of the process is saying this
Mm,
is what I've done.
mm,
This is who I was. But that is okay. Like
mm,
if someone's going to judge you, they're
mm,
not your person anyways
mm.
and they needed to go on that journey of their own to figure out why not judging people is so important. By the way, that is one of the hardest things I deal with is not instantly judging someone. And that doesn't even mean always negative. Instantly judging that they're maybe smart and they're really struggling. Or, you know, instantly judging that they're gorgeous, but they have that inner self-loathing and they think they're the ugliest person in the world. So I work with that all the time and not instantly judging people. And instantly judging doesn't always mean you judge them negatively. It could be like, oh my gosh, she's got it made. But that person goes home and her life is a disaster and nobody sees her. So I really stop myself and I'm like, I just want to
Mm,
focus in on this person and who they are, what they're really saying, and what it is that they need. Like, what are they crying out for?
mm.
But sharing your story is definitely it's exposure, right? It's you're exposed. It's like walking naked on stage. Here I am. And like people laughing or covering their eyes or like, what the heck is going on? But it's your truth, right? I would not suggest you do it naked, but you need to go out there and expose yourself, be real, be
Mm,
vulnerable because it's your truth. It doesn't matter how they receive it. And when I go on stage, because since then I've done it many times, but when I go on stage, I know I'm hitting a third of that group, whether there's 100 people or thousands of people. I know a third of those people are thinking, when is she getting off? This is a good time for a potty break. And I know a third of them are like, she made some really good points. But that other third, they were there to hear me speak. And they are the ones waiting in line to talk to me. Their lives are changing. They're seeing hope. And so I do it knowing I'm only hitting a third, but that's okay. If only one person walked up to me and everybody else was like, what was that? I
mm,
would feel like I succeeded, right?
mm,
So go out there and expose yourself. I'm telling you, first of all, you're going to be so surprised
mm,
how when you are vulnerable and you share your truth, how little you really are judged. Because people understand that they have that own hidden truth that they've been afraid to share. And they're more empathetic towards you when you do that. So you're going to be really surprised. It wasn't the horrible thing I thought it was going to be when I went on stage of people judging me and thinking how stupid I was, right? And so when I went out there, that's what I thought was going to happen. And it wasn't. And it's never been like that. I've never had one person throw a negative remark at me. I mean, they kept it maybe to themselves, but I have made connections that I know that I did that journey for a reason. And at the end of the day, one of the decisions that was given to me was they wanted me to sue the doctors because it was an accident of theirs during surgery. And immediately my response was, no, whatever time I have here, I don't want to waste it fighting in court for a little bit of money. That's just, I'm not taking it with me, right? So and by the way, it's called practicing medicine for a reason. When you go into surgery, things could happen. It wasn't like he showed up drunk. It was literally something that happens during surgery. It's one of the
mm,
risks.
mm,
And so I chose to not do that. That doesn't mean it's a choice for everybody, but I wanted my time here on earth to be joyful, to be sharing joyfulness. I didn't want it to be court hearings and depositions and for what? And these things go on for years. Like they try to outweigh you. And it goes on for years. I just decided none of that negativity. I did not want that. And I'm
mm.
still very good friends with that doctor. I was never angry with him. I'm like, what do we do now?
I hear you so good. I myself, I'm gonna have to re-listen to this because these are personal questions that I'm asking. And one of the things I'm taking away, I just want to reflect on verbally for everyone, was like the answer that I got from you was the confession. What did I do? And this comes back to the thing that you talked about earlier, seizing this deep responsibility for life, no matter what, in the sense that my thing was like, I think I was thinking about like what people did to me. And this sounds crazy and it's not totally fair. You kind of touched upon this earlier, but what did I do in that moment?
To
Like,
deserve that?
no, 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 not to deserve it, but how did I shrink? How did I not show up fully with presence? How did I not set a boundary? I know this isn't applicable for certain things, but if for me, I can fall into victim thinking, and even without abuse, just I feel like abuse is such a touchy topic, but but this ability that I'm sensing within myself right now in relating to my own traumas differently, I can feel how I shrank in some ways, how I beat myself up, how I, in some ways didn't lean into it, didn't embrace it. And this idea of confession, like, here's what I did. Like, I didn't do all of it, but I, I could have responded. I could have, here's what I did. That's my part. And as I speak these words, I kind of understand it. I don't know how you're hearing this, but it makes a lot of sense to me about seeing how this life comes up with me, how seeing how this life evolves together with me. It's co-created with me. And seeing my role in it and taking responsibility for that, even if I didn't really have responsibility back then, but still nonetheless taking responsibility for it.
Jared, you should take responsibility for all of it. Here's why.
Cool, yeah.
You can't control anybody. So even if I put that boundary that I do not want men to talk to me in a sexual way, right? And business. And I put up this boundary, that doesn't stop somebody from doing that. So I only have control over my response, like setting them straight right away. I don't want to laugh at it or ignore it. I want to say, hey, I don't appreciate being talked like, and I know that you probably didn't mean it to sound that way. Just don't let it happen again, please. And like to hopefully keep a friendship. So I just want you to understand that you cannot control, no matter what you do, what other people do, say, or how they act towards you. But you can absolutely control how you respond, how you receive it. Like when my grandkids come to me and say, so and so hurt my feelings, the first thing out of my mouth is, nobody can hurt your feelings. You allow that to happen. So what do? And so you have to realize that you only have control over yourself, how you process what someone says, how you want to receive it. You can receive it a lot of different ways. And whatever they're doing to you is their journey. Um, I was raised with my dad leaving it when I was 5 because he was an alcoholic. Best thing probably in the world for me, but little girls want their daddies there, right? And I remember going to his funeral. We reconnected when I was 16 after my brother had passed away. And we sort of stayed together a little bit, not much. But at his funeral, I went to his funeral and I got there and the place was so packed. I thought I was at the wrong place. And I snuck in the back row. That was the only place left. And finally, some of my aunts saw me and moved me up front. I was his only surviving child. And I'm sitting there, and he had been sober for 20 years at this point. And there was a line of people literally going, it was a 4-hour funeral, so it was that crazy, going up to talk. And they would come up to the microphone and say, Lonnie found me and I was in the gutter and my wife had thrown me out. I had nothing. I lost my job. These are cities, mayors, major cities in Orange County, police officers, firemen, because he lived in Laguna Hills, which was pretty reputable. And they were talking about how he saved their lives because he was their sponsor. He helped get them clean. He didn't help them get clean because they did that all on their own, but he helped them by being there for them and putting that mirror in their face, right? You want to drink? Go ahead. This is what will happen. And putting that mirror in their face. But it occurred to me right then, all that hatred and anger and that little hurt girl in me immediately saw. I looked at all the people that were just showing up for the funeral, knowing there was more. And I realized my dad's journey was not to be a dad. He sucked at it. He was awful. His journey was to be an alcoholic and a drug addict, to go through that horrible event, part through his life, get clean so that he could show up for all these people. And
Mm.
how selfish of me would it have been to like make him be a dad that he sucked at. Like this was his journey. And I literally was able to love my dad again, to not only love him, but respect and honor everything that he did with that 20 years of his life, not to mention the journey he had to go through to get there. But now I see people going through those journeys and I like smile hoping that they get to that good part. Not everybody makes it there, right? But if they don't make it there, I promise you, you have put an impression on somebody else that will change their lives. So I just think that it's the way
Mm.
you receive it. And I wasn't ready to receive that until I
Yeah.
was at his funeral. I wasn't even able to tell him how proud I was.
Mm.
But it wasn't until his funeral that I was able to receive the fact that he was doing his life's purpose. And that wasn't to be a dad.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm seeing things differently. I love it. I love it. Your podcast, no wonder it is crushing it these days. What, you started it a year ago?
It was just a year ago in
Wow.
August, the end of August, and we have had 140,000 downloads already, like, which is crazy for me. And I can't even tell you, like, we've had 1,700 rating, 5-star ratings, and there's so many reviews. I go read them because I'm like, I want to know where I can improve, or what are they hungry for? Like, who can I find to come share the next story? So I'm always reading them to see, what they're hungry for, what they need to hear, and what, feeds their soul.
I might have a person to share with you too. Really inspiring story. Yeah, we'll talk after. Yeah, that just came to mind. Yeah, it's interesting to me because when I hear you speak right now about stories, I mean, I can feel like this is like this is, I'm learning, I'm absorbing, and I'm like, I'm looking at like, what do they call in this book, the blue zones. They identified the longest living people in the world. They looked at their diet, their community, their everything, and they came up with this concept about why these people around all parts of the world live so long. And it was called, like, I might get it wrong, Ikaiji. And it was this intersection of life purpose, the world needing to hear a message, um, passion to deliver the message, and then community. And then at the center of it is like you this is when you're you, like you're in the zen, you're in the moment, like you're just broadcasting like a star. And I hear this and I just understand totally like why your podcast is just it's so interesting to me. You have 7 grandkids. It feels like, I don't know, you probably found your life purpose a long time ago, or at least are continuing to develop and understand your life purpose more and more. It feels like, I don't know, like you were already a butterfly, but compared to what you are now, you were the cocoon, and now you're like a butterfly. That's what I'm getting the feeling. How's your life purpose going these days?
It's good.
Cool.
It's good.
Cool.
I mean, I like people to understand, to focus on their self-love. People think they're selfish if they're taking time for themselves and they have children and a husband and a job. And this is for men too. Men need to take care of themselves because they feel like they have to be there, right? They're the protector of their families and the providers. But here's the thing, if you let yourself break, who's going to do that job? So you have to take that time to, like, just for you. I don't care if it's going out to the golf course for 2 hours on Saturday. That's your time. Do whatever you have to do to give yourself some self-love. The other thing I tell people to do all the time is, whatever it is that you want to hear from your dad that didn't show up, or your mom that
Mm.
just was so hard on you, or your boss, tell yourself that you're freaking awesome at this job. My husband laughs at me all the time because if I walk out to the car for dinner like last night and he doesn't say, "Oh, you look nice," I'm like, "Gee, Jana, you look great tonight." And I start talking to myself and he's like, "I don't even need to anymore because you got it."
Oh my gosh. I love it so much. Where can people download your podcast? Where can people find you online?
Well, I am on iTunes, but guys, I'll tell you all a little trick. I have to say it really quiet. You know that iPhone that has that little helper in there? His name is Siri.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you just go, Hey Siri in your phone. I'm trying not to make my phones and everything in the house answer me. Um, Download Jana Short. It'll take you right to the podcast and you can do it. It does it for your podcast too. So they just say your name and your podcast pops up and you just click subscribe and you subscribe to the podcast. But you can also find me at Best Holistic Life, which is my quarterly magazine, because I also put these stories out in a seasonal magazine, and we have some massive celebrities in this, in some of the issues. It comes out every quarter, so the new one's coming out on the 21st of September. So that's what I'm working on right now. My screen's covered with pages to organize.
Oh my gosh. And how do they sign up for that magazine? Because that is that through iTunes as well?
Um, well, you could probably find it through iTunes, but you could just go to my website, janashort.com, and go to the magazine and just subscribe. And then it'll automatically, it goes out digitally, but it's also in hard copy. So you can get it on Amazon if you want the hard copy. I love the digital one because I'm a global influencer. And if I send this to someone in Italy or into Australia or England, all they do is press that link because they saw something that really hit their fancy, and they can press that link and connect with that author. So I like the digital ones a lot better. But we went ahead and did the hard copy as well because people really wanted it.
Mm. With that being said, Jana, thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate it so much. I'm very grateful.
Thank you, Jared. It was such a pleasure to be here today.